Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome TJK Shares, one-on-one with TJK. We have promised you on this channel we bring you ordinary people doing extraordinary things all over the world. We've gone all over the continent. We've gone to coffee farmers. We've gone to Brazil. We've come back and took you around the world, and we'll continue to do that in our series. We want you to learn, relearn, and unlearn some few things. While you do that, we at tjkshares also continue to learn from you. We continue to engage with you through comments, through shares, and all activities. This afternoon, morning, evening, whatever time zone you are in, we move around. This is being recorded in San Diego, California, connecting with our home person. Today, we are excited and honored to be hosting our amazing man. He's done so much in his young age. He's written several books in his young age. He's pursuing masters. He's done engineering. He's done geoscience. Amazing person, but even more amazing and transformational. This is the man who took time and used the Nyaka libraries in Nyakajezi, Uganda, Kambuga, Rukunjiri, Kanungu, past the Nengo, and was inspired to do some extraordinary things we'll talk about. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and welcome Devis Ampumuza, engineer. Welcome, my man. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Please greet the people and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you very much, Dr. TJK. It's an honor. I really highly appreciate you for hosting me on this show. My name is Devis Ampumuza. Dr. Jackson Kaburi and I come from the same place.
Yes.
I was born and raised in Kanungu district, Kambuga. It's just a few, about maybe 2 or 3, a few kilometers from where Dr. Jackson Kaburi is born. I am very exhilarated on this show because Dr. Jackson Kaburi was a very huge, big source of inspiration to all of us when we were growing up. I actually didn't know until I was about maybe 11 years that Jackson Kaburi actually grew up in my hometown, my home village in Kambuga, because he had done so many amazing things. He had, he had developed the entire place, and, I didn't think somebody from my village could actually do that. So it was a very, very great source of inspiration. So I am a petroleum geoscientist. I went to Kambuga Modern Primary School in Kanungu, and looking at people like Dr. Jackson, I was always very inspired. I always read my books, and I thank my parents so much because they really gave me the time to read my books. I didn't do housework. I don't remember doing a lot of housework. My parents do school, and I was very lucky to be one of the best in my district. And then I went to the seminary, St. Paul's Seminary, Rushoroza. After my senior 4, I went to Chambogo College School, and I was among the top 5 students in my class, science class. I went to Makerere University, where I did petroleum geoscience and production. When I graduated, I tried to figure my life out because the unemployment rate is really high in Uganda, and I was one, like any other person that grows up in Uganda and goes through those challenges. I always, this is something I should have said earlier, I always read my books and contemplated upon my life in the Nyaka library. Kambuga, it's a village in Uganda. I really, really thank God for being born in that place, because I enjoyed the rights of people who are, I think, in very, very big cities around the world. Dr. Jackson right now is in San Diego, but at that time I think I was not different because the library had Wi-Fi, it had internet, it had books. I was so amazed to have a village as remote as it was, have a very good library. So I always went to the library. And so as I looked for jobs, most of the time I spent it in that library. And I think that's the main reason we had this show, because I'm a writer. So most of my books, I wrote them in the Nyaka Blue Lupin Library. My first book was The Great Mind. My other book, Tapping Uganda's Oil Wells. My third book, A Mysterious Oil Ditch. And my the latest launched book was Seminary, The Paragon of Education. So I graduated with petroleum in geoscience and production from Makerere University. After that, I enrolled. I was very lucky to be sponsored by a very good Samaritan, and I did a course online in the United Kingdom, NEBOSH International General Certificate. And his name is Azere Boniface. He has really supported me so much. I really appreciate him. So I became a health and safety engineer. I had in petroleum, we had a course unit, health and safety, and I was really interested in health and safety because I come from a that has a very poor health and safety culture. And I'm glad to say now people are waking up, and because we are one of the latest countries to produce oil, and so and with oil and gas companies, safety comes first. Also because our oil and gas is in a very environmentally sensitive region, we are expected to be very cautious about safety and the environment. And so I really had a passion to see how I can change the safety culture of Uganda, contribute to changing the safety culture, making it a positive one, a strong, positive safety culture. So after that, I was able to work for a company for about over 2 years as a health and safety engineer, where I got really very good skills in health and safety. And then I'm currently pursuing my master's in petroleum geoscience from Makerere University. So, Dr. Jackson Kaguri, your question was just to talk a little bit about myself. I may not have, gone with a chronology that you might have wanted, but that's a little bit about myself.
That is all right. That's all right. You are not an English literature major, so engineers can go all the way. But you gave us a lot of information right there. You shared your career. What I would like to dig deeper into, you grew up in Kambuga. Your mom and dad, I'm sure they were not engineers. By the time you were born, I had already left Kambuga. What inspired you to go into geoscience and health and safety engineering? Who was your role model? Which conversation did you have as a child? When we were growing up, your parents wanted to be a lawyer, an accountant, a doctor, engineer. And engineer, they meant construction engineer. Electrical engineering was not talked about. It was civil engineering or else. But here you are, you grew up in the area, and I don't think there are many of that specialization. At the time, there was no oil in Uganda. Why? What inspired you to go that route? What were the inspirations and mentorship that led you to that course?
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Now, that's a very interesting question, because to be very honest, and I think this is one of the biggest challenges that the young people in Africa here face. Yes. When it comes to career guidance. I want to be very honest with you, Dr. Jackson. Please. That if you ask me at all when I was growing up what I wanted to be, I will not lie to you that it was anything close to petroleum, anything close to any particular profession or career.
Yes. Yes.
Coming from a humble background and looking at people who had become successful. I remember that time my uncle, Dr. Polycarp, who you know very well,
Yes.
worked at the bank, had built a very, very beautiful house in the village that everyone talked about. Then Dr. Kaburi, who had changed the entire village. You know, I mean, it's a household name. Everybody knew you, including myself. I always had a passion. I really have to work so hard and become a very, very great person in my village. That was, but I really did not have any specific career I looked up to. But of course, at that time, everybody knew you have to be great. You have to be an engineer or a doctor or pilot or so. What I can say is I wanted to be an engineer. And in fact, when I was filling for my courses, I had 4 engineering courses all lined up. I think the first one was electrical engineering. My second was petroleum. My third, civil engineering. Now, I don't know how the government gave me a government scholarship for a different
yes.
Aki. Now, when the papers came and I had won and they gave me records and archives management, I had done physics, I had done chemistry, I had done math. My parents looked records and archives. So my parents looked at it as a very, my dad is a teacher, so he looked at it as a very, very maybe unique course, but looking at it is like records. Are you going to be a record keeper? So looked into it. And they cut bottom line of it. For you to qualify for that course, you had to have done any 2 best done. So they said, why did you then have to suffer with these sciences? You could have done any other course.
Exactly.
So one thing I want to thank my parents for, Jackson, this is very special. I have the most modern parents. They are village people. They have been born in the village. They have grown up there, worked in the village. But my parents, most modern mindset I have ever seen. And for me, if you ask me right now who your greatest inspiration is in this world, my greatest inspiration is not presidents, is not people whose talks I always follow, who have done great things. My greatest inspiration, my parents, my dear parents.
And that is
who they said no, we do not have money. They didn't have money at all, but they said, let's apply for another course. And of course, from there, I didn't even have an idea how the money was going to come, but I ended up, God made it possible, and I did the course. So my journey was really, really a fuzzy one. I want to be very honest with you, is that all I wanted was to be great. So after that, after the government scholarship, which very many people asked, my parents called my parents, how does this gentleman, he's from a humble family, you don't have money, how does he turn down a government scholarship?
Yes.
My parents were like, I went, they didn't have money. I had people who were really willing to help me, contribute to my tuition, and they did, and I did a course. I did my course, Petroleum Geoscience and Production. Somehow I applied for it, on private immediately. So when I got government and I canceled the government scholarship, the course I was looking up was petroleum because it was new in Uganda. We didn't have so many people. I was like, this is my place to be. This is perhaps where I'm destined to be. Let it be. I applied for petroleum and they gave it to me on private, and I did it. So I really had like a cocktail of so many things running in my mind at that time. I won't really, really hide it. It's, I think, a gap in career guidance. I did not know what exactly I wanted to be. I was only passionately curious about becoming a great person in my career. And of course, everybody knew, do be a doctor, be an engineer, you're going to get a job. going to become a great person. And so that's how I ended up as a petroleum geoscientist, which I actually loved much later when I joined the profession. So yeah.
That is really very, very, very good. The point you are making there that many people actually end up not realizing is the people we are looking up to, the people who actually inspire us and pave the way are not far away from where we are. They are living right there in our own houses. They are working with us every day. And those are the parents who brought you in this world. I've been reading quotes for my children, being a Salongo and father of 2 boys, and telling them any person is going to love you and care for you and give you what you want, but nobody is ever going to love you as much as your mom and your dad. Others can be conditional, and if we take that inspiration right from our homes, we will go further. And I am so glad. I know your parents. Excuse the noise. I know your parents, and I know your dad is the one who connected you to my dad to start even using the library. Because at that time we had not met. That is wonderful story about your parents and taking on a course that is futuristic. You didn't know what was going to happen in Uganda, but now look where it is. You cannot go without a job. So you got in this course. You started studying at Makerere University. Every holiday you go back to Nyaka Blue Ribbon Library. I want to give a shout out to Mark, the man who manages our Blue Ribbon Library. Thank you for the good job done. Now you see the products, the working impact of people who have used the library and turned out to be authors. In the last episode I did, Devis, about writing and reading, I said the reason I started writing my books mostly was to inspire people like you from my village to realize that writing is not something you are born with, or you have to be a journalist at New York Times or New Vision. I wanted to set an example that can be done. You can go touch and feel the person who have done it and also do it. Right after your book, which I'm going to dig into now, another Nyaka alumni, Pius, wrote a book, which is also out there in the world. But before we get into your first book, tell me how the writing skills developed. How did you go from this petroleum geoscientist engineer, we know you to do the math, do calculations, to start writing? Where did the writing back or the writing passion dig into? How did that happen, and how do you balance it between being an engineer and being a writer?
That's a perfect question, very perfect question. Now, when I was growing up, when I was in primary, I think primary 1, we got a visitor, a lady. I remember it was a lady. I remember her name. She had come, I think, to inspire children, talk to us, and show us that things are easy. We can make it. And I don't remember so much that she said, but I remember she said, if you ever want to be remembered, please or plant a tree.
Yes.
That was actually a team. It was a group of people. It was, I think, 2 ladies and 3 gentlemen. They were talking to us. That's why I think what you do to very little children, you must be very careful. I remember that very well. It's stuck into my mind that if you ever want to be remembered, write a book or plant a tree. I remember getting back home and telling my dad that same exact thing. Now, growing up, I always thought, I used to read books. I always thought for you to write a book, you must be a professor.
Yeah.
And I'm very glad that I started writing when I was a very young boy. Just in primary, I started writing. I had just a few things I would put up. Then I think when it got to upper primary, I got lost into a lot of things, getting serious with school. Now, the candle got rekindled again in senior 4, in senior 2, when I was in the seminar. I started writing. And the thing was about the mind. I don't know how I chose the mind. I started writing because I always wanted to be great, and I felt like I had the capacity, the potential to become great. So I started writing a few things. When I got to HSE, I continued writing. Now, when I got to university, I really had no intention at all. This was like my diary. I had no intention at all to ever produce a book. When I got to university, so that you can actually write, you can actually publish, you don't have to do a master's to write. It's just a matter of learning how to write. And I was so good. I loved literature. I didn't do literature. Now, this is the funny thing. I read most of the novels. Now there is a famous novel that I actually acted. I used to read novels, but I was not doing.
Okay.
For us, you had to do CRA or you had to do Latin. So I did Latin. Latin was compulsory, so you had to do CRA or literature. So I opted for CRA and Latin. So I did Latin at my senior 4, but then I did not do literature. But I used to. I studied literature up to senior 2, but then I opted for CRA. But I did not. I read all their novels, but I did not. I just enjoyed them. I also used to go to like their class and enjoy with the teachers, but I wasn't doing it. So I had like I realized that I also was a good writer. And I need to say this, I have always been a very good debater. I was the best junior debater when I was 1K AIMA for the entire Western region. I used to be a president of debate and writers club, even in my senior 6 as a scientist. People used to ask me, you like debate? Are you going to do? No. I was the debater president. I was the president of all the clubs. I was the debate and writers president in HSE. So I really reading and, like articulating, talking. So that's how I ended up, loving my writing career. But that had really nothing to do with, and I think if it hadn't been for the fact that we are born in countries, in middle income countries where you have to struggle, honestly, I think I would have. But sometimes you wonder, you go into writing, the reading culture is not as good. Because I've written 4 books, but I don't want to lie to you that I have made any money from this book. There was a time I actually have an issue with my mom. My mom always tells me, when you write a book, please wait to launch it. Because I sold my goats. I had so many goats to launch a certain. I had to lie to my parents that the book made money for them to allow me. I told them I'm going to make a lot of money. I even lied to them that I made money. I actually didn't. I put in money into a book launch that was like 5 million. I made out like 1, like 2, but I was very lucky. I was very happy. I even gave out some free copies. So I think for me, my passion was, if I write a book, I have an idea. If I put it down, as long as it spreads around the world like wildfire, then I will die a happy man. Like that's when I got to know that really life is really not about so many things. Like I felt like satisfied when I write. I felt satisfied. I remember I was in Olympia Hostel. My friend told me after a launch, Devis, are you stupid? How? You launched a book and books are just here. You can actually sell these books. Because I think I'm a good writer, but I'm very poor at marketing. Because after launch, I kept the books for like 3 weeks until the guy picked a few copies and took them around, and he wrote money like 60,000. And I was like, hey, you mean you can actually sell these books? Because the book and people read the book, I felt so satisfied. So that's how I ended up in. It's something I really love. I love reading. I love writing. Recently, I was actually very angry with myself because my reading game had gone down, because I used to really read more books than I did recently. So I think it's something I love writing. I've actually written now 2 books that I haven't launched yet, that I haven't published, but maybe at some time I'll publish them. I love writing. So it's something I do with passion. I do with joy, for me. And it gives, one of the reasons I think I love writing a lot is that it brings out my power of imagination, like to think about stretch in like 20 years, what do you think is going to happen, and what ideas do you have, and all these things. So I think that's how I found myself writing, but it started from when I was a little boy. And I think the inspiration was by that talk that we had, that if you ever want to be remembered, write a book or plant a tree. And for me, writing a book made more sense, because trees, I always saw my dad planting trees. I didn't see it as a big deal at the time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for elaborating on that. In fact, has answered like 2 other questions I was going to ask you. So the story behind your first book, The Great Mind. Somebody's going to listen to you and see your age and see my age and remember all of us reading Chinua Achebe, reading Kenyan writers, British writers, American writers. How did you choose the title, The Great Mind? And if somebody wants to write a book tomorrow and they are struggling, what tips would you give them how to begin writing the book? You've written 4. We are going to talk about all of them. But somebody might be sitting there going, oh my God, if you want to be remembered, write a book. I want to do it. Devis learned from Jackson Kaguri and wrote his book. Now I also want to get started. So tell us how the title came into The Great Mind, and then how somebody can get started now as they listen to this interview.
Thank you very much. So I always had the conviction, it began with me. I always had the conviction that I'm a great person and I can be great. Like I had a great mind and I can be great. Yes. These are 2 concepts that played a lot in my mind when I was writing. That my conviction is everyone has a great mind.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But not everybody is great.
That's true.
But this is my idea, that unfortunately I did not do a lot of literature reviewing about this, but I believe with sufficient conviction really that we all have the potential to become great. That the only limitation we have is our inability to give ourselves time to do what it takes for us to unleash that kind of potential that we can actually be great. Because until then, can you be great? So one of the famous entrepreneurs, I think, is Altman. He says that successful people believe in themselves almost to the point of delusion. Yes. That's what Altman said. That somebody they believe that they can. Because when you look at Elon Musk, like he believes, like sometimes you think the guy is crazy. He believes I can do this and I have all it takes. They don't have the money yet, but I have all it takes and I'm going to do it. So I believe that we needed that kind of conviction. That kind of, we needed these kinds of things that I wrote in this book to unleash our potential and accept, first of all, that we can become great. The starting point being one has a great mind. And so I shine light in this book, I shine light on some of those aspects of our life that we need to work on to unleash this potential and become great. And really, that's what the entire book is all about. And it was also a source of inspiring myself. I know in Latin, they say in human, err is human. Err is human. Errors. We have a lot of things going on in our lives. We fall short many times. So this was also like a source of inspiration. Like, what are these things I need to work on myself to become a great person? What are these weaknesses? What weaknesses do I have, and how do I, get rid of these weaknesses? How do I become strong in the areas where I'm not strong? And so I shine light on those aspects that we all need to become great. And Dr. Jackson, in this book, my goal really, if our dear readers from around the world ever got to learn that they, first of all, have all it takes to become great. They have a great mind. And that the only thing they need is a trigger, is like something to make them unleash that potential, to reach that point where they are convinced enough that I can be this, I can do this. That Devis wrote a book, I can write it. Yes. I'm going to ask him how he did it, and then I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to have the self-discipline to do this. I need this and that, and I'm going to be focused, I'm going to be committed. I think for me, the idea of writing this book will have been achieved.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard from the man himself. A great mind sits in my home library in Nyakajezi. It sits in my home library in Michigan. And we have copies at Nyaka Blue Ribbon Library, at Nyakajezi, and also in Kutamba. Many of you sit down and take courses and have to pay to listen and learn how to do this. We bring you the author himself for free of charge. You get the information you need. You get to know why he wrote the book. You've heard his inspiration. You've heard how he encourages all of us. He's written more than one book. We would like to end this part right here and bring him again to talk about the 3 other books and also give you more tips on how to do this. When you think you can't do it, you need to look at people like Devis. And then when we come back, in fact, before we go back, we are going to end it by letting Devis tell you, he sat down, he wrote the book. But on that journey, he's already mentioned one man who helped him to complete Masters Online. I would like you to go back to our Kambuga, our Kanungu people who helped you get to launch the book the first time you did it. I know Tom Namara helped with editing. I know Gloria Champirem Lisa helped with the launching. I know Nelson Bemanya was involved. These are people, regardless whether they have written or not, who have taken our young people under their wings and mentored and guided. So give shout out to those people. We end this part, then we'll bring you back next week with another episode following up, starting with Mysterious Oil Ditch, which is the 2nd book you launched. Shout out to your people.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaguri. I really want to thank my parents from the bottom of my heart. They are my greatest inspiration. My dad, my father, David Mateka, and my mom, Lovina Kemba, also known as Kendeje, which means fast. My mom is the fastest person. She's so fast in everything. That's her nickname, an aeroplane.
Yes.
I want to thank the bottom of my heart who contributed to my studying. And those are none other than Dr. Polycarp Musinguzi, who also grew up in Kambuga from a very humble family and reached the clouds. He was executive director, economic advisor to the governor, Bank of Uganda. He was at IMF, he went to World Bank, he has been everywhere. And he was one of the people who inspired me the most. Mr. Azeri, who really supported me. They paid my tuition. They made sure I had everything. I want to tell you, I was born in a humble family, but I really enjoyed the privileges of like a president's son. I really never lacked, and I never forget, I never ever forgot where I came from.